Phenomenal and interesting feedback we'll be talking about. And of course, we're here to take your questions. And I'll introduce our very special guest as soon as I know that we got it on YouTube. So I chose me, Justin, that we're live streaming, but you're not seeing it on YouTube yet. We're live. Okay. All right, guys. So sorry that we had banter a little bit there, but there's a little bit of a delay between when we hit start and when it actually goes live. But I think we are live right now. So let me first say thank you all for being a part of the Psychedelics Revealed viewing audience. We had phenomenal feedback, great commentary from so many people and from around the world, which was always very gratifying. You never know when you're going to walk into a project like this, how people might respond. I could say I'm heartened and it's better than I was hoping for. So that was really great. Secondly, we have such a wonderful and special guest who is one of the big stars from the series, if I could say that, who so many people gave great feedback on, and that's Zach Leary. And Zach, when we asked him to come and be live with you here and help answer your questions, he graciously said, yes, I'd be happy to. So Zach, thank you so much for being here for this particular live webcast.
Thank you for having me, Patrick. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to see you again too. Let me just ask you, I'm wondering, did you get any feedback from people who saw your segment?
Quite a bit. Yeah, more than the average media appearance, I'll put it to you that way.
Terrific.
Anytime I do something, of course, there's always people who write or the typical questions, but it felt like these ones were a little bit more, I think, well-rounded. It was people, they weren't just replying to my episode, they saw several episodes, and I had a lot of questions that were far above my pay grade, some of them that were right in my wheelhouse, and some just really beautiful responses. I mean, I think the great thing that we're seeing in the psychedelic renaissance of today is that people are becoming much more well-educated, knowledgeable, and sensitive to the pros and possible, I don't want to say cons, but the things to look out for with psychedelics, and the feedback I received was reflective of that. It was great.
Yeah, I like that characterization. Rather than using the word cons, it's more characterization of things you need to be looking out for, just to be an educated consumer, if you will.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let me ask this: it's since our last conversation that we had that aired as an episode or part of an episode on our series. Has there been any new developments or anything that you've seen that's happened in the last couple of months that you think are noteworthy in the world or the realm of psychedelics?
The big things that I would say to answer that question are political, or the changes in policy that we're seeing. I mean, I think since we recorded this segment, the Proposition 109 and Proposition 110 in Oregon have had already passed, but that definitely created a domino effect in other state legislative bodies around the country. California put a bill forward. AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is putting forth a bill in the House. Where that goes, who knows? The fact that she's having the conversation alone and gave a very good pitch on the House floor was great to see. In Texas, there's a bill, I forgot the number, but it has to do specifically with MDMA and psilocybin therapy related to veterans. And oddly enough, that bill was championed by Rick Perry, who was an ally of the strangest proportions, one who we would never thought we would see. But that, that really goes to show that, it's something actually Rick Doblin told me a long time ago that was very difficult for me to believe at the time. When Rick started MAPS, and he went straight into the belly of the establishment, and that was a time back then where, the old school people were like, Rick, what are you doing? That's the enemy. Why are you trying to sell them on this? And he's like, you'll see one day going through kind of a traditional establishment-based medicalization model will lead to a change in public opinion on the recreational side. It may take a while, but it will happen. And that's what we're seeing, and I think shifts in policy discussions, and kind of the general curiosity around the medicalization movement really changes the way that people think about how these substances, where they exist in their daily lives, So, I mean, those are the big updates. I mean, there's always great clinical trials going on. At any time, you could go to the Royal College of London, the Robin Carhart Harris Center for Psychedelic Studies there, and see everything that he's doing. Johns Hopkins psilocybin unit, psychedelic unit, it's always doing amazing stuff. I mean, there's too many peer-reviewed studies to name. They're happening every second, but those are great hotspots to check out.
So this is interesting. One of the things, at least that occurs to me as you're speaking about all of this, is that, and I've noticed this in doing the series, it's a strange array of people who seem to align. And
Yes.
yeah, it is somehow, and this is my excitement about psychedelics. It's transcendent. We're living in a very polarized environment, and some of this polarizing has become almost automatic just based on maybe a certain party affiliation politically or other such things. But when you can have like an AOC and a Rick Perry,
Yeah,
both, very wide ends of the spectrum, both advocating for this, there's something special there, because I really I can't think of another thing, at least off the top of my head, another area of interest where that would occur.
right.
So I'm loving that, and I'm loving that that certain states are taking bold measures towards saying, hey, this can be extraordinarily beneficial for people, and there's no reason to prohibit it. So it's and you have a special purview, I guess I'd say, in the sense that your father was such an activist, back in the 60s. And then we watched the whole thing just get shut down, basically. And now there's this renaissance going on that you're, a part of that. And I don't think there's any turning back this time. I mean, do you feel like we're on the path to completion this time, maybe, to get this into the world?
It seems like it. There's no turning back. I mean, certainly the rate of acceleration is much faster than I would have imagined even 10 years ago. New things are happening, every couple of months. There seems to be a big news story. And that is a fantastic thing. And I think, I am, knock on wood, that the mistakes that we made from the 1960s are pretty much, we pretty much have a handle on those now. And, the culture that has always inhabited, psychedelic use, healthy or otherwise, sort of like the future is in their hands now. And to not sort of break the promise and repeat the same patterns of the same mistakes from the 1960s. So we can move into this new renaissance with armed with, the big difference is that we have so much data now.
Yeah.
We really didn't have that before. I mean, the stuff that my dad and Ram Dass were doing at Harvard in the 60s, and before that, Humphrey Osmond and Janiger in the 50s, there were really small little chunks of data that really weren't representative of a holistic view quite yet. And before they could get there, everything got shut down, because the 1960s happened, and that created a cultural revolution that threatened the powers that be. And I really think the shutting down of psychedelics it really had nothing to do with psychedelics itself. It had to do with the people. Nixon didn't like the people that were using psychedelics. The people were, all of a sudden, they were doing psychedelics and they burned their draft cards. So it was really an attack on the people more so than the drug. And psychedelics just sort of got lumped into sort of this modern war on drug warfare hysteria, and which kind of creates another tangent of this conversation. It's important to look at psychedelics in a holistic view of the war on drugs in general, and not just kind of carve it out as its own sort of niche. Most Americans believe, if you look at the latest Gallup poll, of majority, I think it's 64% of Americans believe that the war on drugs as we know it has failed.
Mm-hmm.
and what that does for the work that, you know, MAPS is doing, Johns Hopkins, but also the work for like what Dr. Carl Hart is doing, and, you know, his great book, Drug Use for Grownups, and how he's talking about the stigma against what we call, you know, high risk drugs. And, you know, so the whole thing is just changing rapidly. And I think the world is ready to accept it. And yeah, we're here to stay now.
I love that, and I agree with you. I don't think there's any turning back at this point, and because I think a lot of people of influence are really supporting this. One of the things, and incidentally, for you who are joining us, and some of you maybe joined late, welcome. We do have questions. We're here to take your questions, actually. So many of you have already submitted questions in advance of our live webcast. But if you want to submit a question, if you just send an email to support@psychedelicsrevealed.com. Our customer service team will be there receiving it. I have a spreadsheet right in front of me. They're populating it real time as we go. I am sorry if I don't get to your question. We do have a good amount of them, but several of them are similar. So I'll kind of bundle those together. One answer will answer maybe several questions. So Zach and I are going to, talk a little bit about the things we're talking about right now, but we'll also jump into some questions. So just one more question I have for you, Zach, before we jump in. A lot of questions that we had gotten along the way have been about, geez, I've had an interest, I've never done anything before. Where should I start? And I suspect that's going to be several of the questions that are in my sheet here. And you have, a lot of personal experience and continue to have more experience actually, helping to facilitate, for people to facilitate a journey and to integrate their journey, et cetera. But people say, well, do I start with mushrooms? Do I start with MDMA? Do I start with, ayahuasca? Where's the right first step for me? How would you answer that question?
It's a great question. It's one of the most common questions because it is a great question. So I'll kind of answer it by backing up a little bit. So when a client comes to me for my guided practice that I offer, there is a great Eastern concept that the Hindus and the yogic system have talked about for centuries and centuries, about different states of consciousness, what they call non-ordinary states of consciousness. And in the yogic practice, specifically bhakti yoga or tantric yoga, which contains a lot of practices within it, including meditation, asana, breath work, kirtan, things like that. There's this thing about doing these practices that elicits what's called a non-ordinary state of consciousness, which is different than our waking state of consciousness. So if someone comes to me having not experienced a non-ordinary state of consciousness, that is, they've never done any meditation, they've never done any yoga, they've never done any breath work, and they just want to jump right into a 5-gram psilocybin session, that's a little bit of a cautionary tale there, and one I look out for. So where we start is by making sure someone understands what the concept of having a non-ordinary state of consciousness, spiritual / physiological experience. What does that mean? Are you sure you know what that means? And starting with breath work, with meditation, reading some of these texts, watching some of these videos, really learning about some of what these great teachers that came before us talked about with such grace and eloquence. Kind of start there, which kind of creates the little shift in consciousness about being ready to go into that. Specifically, this is very subjective, but if somebody hasn't had any substance experience, I highly recommend, they kind of check out cannabis maybe to sort of soften their receptor sites, because I do think cannabis is a low-grade psychedelic in a way. And psilocybin is probably the best kind of, or I shouldn't say the best, but sort of has the easiest barrier of entry in going into the psychedelic experience. So then kind of working your way into there. You know, if you haven't dealt with any of these concepts before, any of these practices, and all of a sudden you're taking a trip to Peru to go sit with some shamans and do some ayahuasca, chances are you're probably going to get, you know, go through a wormhole and be shot out the other end, not knowing exactly what's going to happen, what happened, or how to integrate it. It's not that it's dangerous or anything like that, and there's no physical harm or anything like that. It's more that you're not going to know what to do with it.
Right.
You know, the experience, it's so unique. It's so abstract. So many of the messages that come to you come in metaphors, come in energy shifts. They don't come to you in direct language. They come to you in little pieces, little fragments of your subconscious and of your past and of your future and of sort of the whole construct of what your soul and your incarnation is. And knowing what to do with that is, it takes work, you know. I mean, and that's the other thing I constantly tell people is psychedelics this isn't a magic pill that all of a sudden, you know, you take it, you graduate by skipping the other 10 steps that it takes to do what you're trying to do. You still have to show up to do the work. Can it act as an accelerant to sort of like, hey, jumpstart your treatment on depression, anxiety, PTSD, addiction? Yes, absolutely. But you still have to be prepared and willing to do the rest of the work.
That's great. Thank you for explaining that. And, you know, it's interesting because I wouldn't have thought of that, but you did, as far as saying, hey, if you've never done anything, you know, maybe marijuana is a, you know, good way to kind of like just say, get to a little ultra state of consciousness. And what was the term you used about the receptors, of not blunt them, but soften the receptors a little? That was great. So let me take some questions here. That's maybe a follow-up to some of that. So Dinah asks, do psychedelics affect dopamine in the brain?
They do, but that is not the primary receptor site that we're dealing with. You know, any kind of intense experience that sort of gives you a little bit of an adrenaline rush or a kind of a high on life sort of floods your dopamine receptor sites, absolutely. Mm-hmm. But they work more specifically on your serotonin, on your serotonin receptor site. So it's not exactly like the way cocaine and heroin works on your dopamine, right? Flooding, draining. A little different. Yeah.
Thank you. Multiple customers, and this is interesting that multiple people asked about this. How can psychedelics help those suffering from cancer? So, and I'll just say that in one of our episodes, we interviewed Bill Richards at the psilocybin lab at Johns Hopkins, and they were working with cancer patients who were terminal and helping them to deal with the existential angst of having a terminal disease. And it was quite successful in giving these people peace about the fact that they were going to be passing. So that's just one that I can mention, but what other thoughts might you have around that?
Well, that's the primary one. And Dr. Tony Bossis at NYU and the team at NYU were the first to do that study legally. And they've done it multiple times. The end of life anxiety with terminal cancer patients. It's and I encourage anyone to read the peer review studies on that, either from NYU or Johns Hopkins. Bill Richards or Tony Bossis, any of those guys. The peer reviewed studies, they're kind of dense to get through, but they're well worth taking the time. I mean, there isn't any empirical data that shows that psychedelics are a cure for the disease itself or for malignant tumors or anything like that. It's more about making peace with your own humanity, and for better, for worse, sickness can be part of our humanity. Disease can be part of our humanity. You know, very healthy people who are living very healthy, productive lives sometimes do get cancer. You know, sometimes it does happen. Most of the time there's sort of an external contributing factor, but sometimes, you know, and we all have to be prepared that, you know, our journey in this meat suit doesn't exactly go the way that we want it to sometimes. And that includes dealing with with sickness, whether it's with yourself or friends or loved ones. And psychedelics are a great way to learn how to make peace with that. How to, as my dear teacher and friend would say, to make friends with that. Ram Dass would say that. You have to learn how to make friends with your cancer.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's, so thank you. I think that great insight. And I think, a big part of that battle is the psychological and psycho-spiritual aspect of it. And I was pretty floored by some of the things that Bill Richards shared in that interview. So anybody who had a particular interest in that, in addition to what Zach just shared, I'd go back and watch that Bill Richards interview, and I think you'll get deeper context from him on psilocybin relative to this, at least. So here's, as I'm glancing, there's so many questions that are almost the exact same. Are there any therapists or practitioners in the United States that I can go to administer MDMA or psilocybin? If not, how do I find a legit shaman or therapist in other countries? And then there's another one you asked about Europe, and several that are just asking, how do I find resources near me? So are there places like Rhythmia in the US or in other countries other than Costa Rica? So I'm just going down to showing that there's a lot of questions about this. So I'll just start out, number one, by saying, it's an area that, we could really, if you notice it when you watch the series, we really got into it with Rhythmia. Why? Because 100% functioning legally, with a license from the government in Costa Rica, and we could bring cameras in, we can interview the people there, we can show them, because it's something that, it was legal. So in other places, at this point, for the most part, it's not legal, although it's getting very close to being legal. I will also say that people that I know that have insight into, like the federal government, the Justice Department, et cetera, basically said it's not on the agenda of the Justice Department. And this is hearsay. I'm going to just be very clear about this. It's not authoritative. That, they're not, this isn't an area that they have much of concern around. I will say that, hey, if you're searching right now and it has to do with MDMA or psilocybin, what have you, you've got a master sitting here with me right now with Zach Leary, and I'm not, I won't say anything more than that except to say maybe contact him, and he is networked. So, not only is, he somebody who actively participates in helping people with their journeys, but he also probably knows a lot of other people in a lot of places who are doing similar things. So Zach, can I give out an email or something for you, or we get?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you can email me at zachleary@mac.com, and I'm happy to take your questions as best as I can. I get a lot of email, but I do run a private guided journey practice. It's something I do. I do it out of a choice that, we're in a very strange gray area in the psychedelic world still. We're not there yet to where most people don't qualify for clinical trials with MAPS or Johns Hopkins or someplace like that. And the task of finding an underground therapist, not an easy thing to do. So I choose to put myself out there. There are other resources like trippingly.net, the Third Wave website, that do provide credible, vetted resources in your local area. The guys who run those sites are good people who do vet the listings there. Most people, though, however, in those listings are still doing only integration sessions. Most people aren't comfortable offering guided journey sessions like I do quite yet. Yeah, I mean, Costa Rica, I know in the Netherlands and in Portugal, there are psilocybin centers that you can go to. We're still a ways off from that existing in America. But I still encourage everybody to use their own right, their own sort of calling and inspiration to unleash the cognitive libertarian within everybody. You have You have the right to change your own consciousness as you see fit. I'm not going to comment on the law or around that. I'm not encouraging you to go off and engage in indiscriminate, irresponsible use. But I do believe that, the cognitive liberty discussion needs to stay alive. And this is something that started in the 1960s. And it's a flame I'm very passionate about keeping alive, is that we have the right to change our consciousness and our spiritual journey as we see fit. And if you do it with somebody who is knowledgeable, has had a lot of experience, knows about the risks, I think you'll be in good hands. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Thank you. And thanks for being willing to give out your email.
Sure.
I'm just going to caution people. There's a lot of people watching, and if it takes a while for Zach to get back to you, please don't take it personally. I'm sure he'll do the best he can.
But Patrick, can I just add one more thing to that?
Yeah, please.
Please, because there is one thing that anybody who is seeking guided psychedelic therapy, we're all very excited from the headlines and the research. We love it. It's great, right? But as it relates to yourself, please do a little bit of research about if you have any mental health issues in the past that involve psychiatric drugs, SSRIs or MAOIs. Please do the research. There's lots and lots published about the contraindicators between taking SSRIs and psychedelics, and how long you have to be off of them, and so on and so forth. Please do that before writing me or writing anyone else. And it doesn't mean that your serotonin sites, your brain is broken forever. You can work with great functional medicine doctors in your area to get your blood work, look at your amino acid levels, to sort of restore homeostasis in you and get you back to that place to where psychedelics are a viable option. But if you're on SSRIs currently, sadly, it is not an option for you at this time. And I just really encourage everyone to, do their own research on their own part of the set and setting discussion before jumping into it.
Thank you for saying that, because that's some of the questions. Like Dale asked, how can people titrate off psychiatric medications and other medications? I'd like to find someone near Boise, Idaho that can help me do that. So I think the strong advice, and if you heard what Zach just said, is whoever is the prescribing doctor is, you have to work with them to get off of those medications. And I think as a general rule, you can't really be on those medications and do this type of work. You really need to be off of them. So work with whoever prescribed them and make that your next step. John asked a very similar question. I have family members who suffer from schizophrenia. Have psychedelics been treating schizophrenia? Is it possible? So now again, schizophrenic may be on some very strong medication. I don't personally, and schizophrenia is sort of there's many types of schizophrenic. So it's not like there's just kind of one maybe global conclusion around this, but unless there is a treating psychiatrist who's involved in the dynamic that would understand the neuropharmacology around this, I would be very, very cautious. And on my own opinion, I want to hear what you have to say, Zach, because I might be, you might not agree with this, but at the same time, I think that there could be some promise around psychedelics in a schizophrenic. It just depends on the nature of the schizophrenia, and what psychedelic I'd imagine. But do you have any more, like, I'm abstract, do you have any more direct knowledge or experience with this?
I mean, what you said is absolutely correct. You do have to work with your psychiatrist on your own neuropharmacology to kind of see where you're at. I mean, if you are currently in a having schizophrenic outbursts and the associated mania episodes that go with it, it's probably not the right time for you yet. But if you have worked with a psychiatrist and you're working with it, it's at bay, you're tapering off the medication, the rest of your life, put a big gold star on that, the rest of your life is otherwise stable. That's a big thing, is making sure the rest of your game, your nuts and bolts, your economic situation, relationships, housing is stable. and then kind of slowly going into psychedelic therapy can be beneficial. I mean, with people with severe mental health history, though, I mean, the thing is, you will start slow. You know, this isn't something you're just jump into. There's a lot of research on microdosing. Go to Jim Fadiman's website, Dr. Jim Fadiman's website. He has a lot of great resources there on microdosing as it relates to specific severe mental health issues. It's a great resource. I'm not a psychiatrist, but I recommend that you start there. And just knowing it's a slow road, but yes, there is promise in this area.
Terrific, thank you. Next question, more of a comment, but it leads to, I think, a little bit of a conversation. It says, I was really glad when you mentioned in the film in episode 5 that you were going to follow up with the roundtable group to see what long-term effects or what longer-term effects were happening. So, you know, for people who maybe missed some parts of the docuseries, we followed a group of 6 people through 4 nights of ayahuasca ceremony at Rhythmia in Costa Rica, and it was a gas. You know, I mean, it's like now we actually get, because everybody talking about interviews is one thing, but now we're looking at actual people who showed up at an actual place and went through the ceremonies, and you can see how varied the responses are as far as, you know, what the people's experience was. Not only, you know, from a single journey, but from night to night, the same person. Not be like, you had 6 people have 6 different experiences for sure, but then the same person having different experiences every night. So there's a lot of fun. Well, it wasn't fun for some of them, it was fun for me. But it was a lot of fun to track that. But what we did is then we when they got back to the United States, we waited a month, and then we brought them all into our film studio and sat with them, you know, and said, okay, it's a month later now. Tell us what's happened in your life. What, you know, have you changed, or is it just back to where things were before you went to Rhythmia? And then if you watch, there was this special segment we had tag on. After that particular conversation, one of the 6 people in the group had, you know, some spectacular, miraculous experience that just suddenly came one night, you know, right on the heels of that conversation. And we brought her back in and sat down and had that conversation. So it was a pretty magical thing to witness. But here's where it leads me to, Zach, is that most people, at least the ones who seemed like they really knew what they were doing, really, I don't want to say forcefully is the wrong word, but they strongly advocated for the integration process after a journey. How do you put it into your life? And that's really the work and where the benefit is. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So kind of like I was saying earlier, a lot of the transformational aspects that come from doing psychedelic work come to you in a form that is otherwise unfamiliar. It may not come to you in direct language that is saying, okay, spirit is telling you to do this, this, and this with your life, and all of a sudden everything's better. It can come in an energetic shift and having a look at something that happened in your past and being able to look and give witness consciousness to it, and kind of associating whether that is a positive or negative relationship in your life. And it's just an energetic feeling. It may come to you in a metaphorical representation. For instance, I had a client recently who was telling me about these purple balls that she kept having to push away. And later on, we put it together that the purple balls were people in her life that are demanding too much energy and are kind of energy sucks in her life. But during the journey, they came to her as these purple balls, and so on and so forth. So, you know, the transformational spiritual shift that you will experience is something that is sort of an unraveling of your kind of your current life karmas in the form, kind of in the view of your subconscious, you know. And we now have kind of given this label to this thing called the default mode network, but it's the default mode network is part of your nervous system that kind of kicks in anytime you have a non-ordinary state of a non-ordinary experience, even something as mundane as a dream. The default mode network kicks in and says, okay, forget that. This is reality. We have to agree that this wall over here is white. These lights are yellow. You know, reality is a construct, but anybody who's taken psychedelics knows that, well, whatever you think reality is, that's not it. And the default mode network is a very kind of quick and deliberate way of helping you to forget non-ordinary experiences like psychedelics work. So the integration process, which I really, I mean, it's a lifelong process, but I really consider the sweet spot is to be the 7 days following your journey. That can extend into the weeks, but those 7 days when you are writing down what it is that happened to you on your journey, whether you did it in a group, an ayahuasca ceremony, or working with a guide, somebody who wrote it down for you, but you kind of quickly journaled and kind of just exercise all of these demons and amazing revelations, this revelatory expansion that you had during the journey, and you're kind of putting it on paper and looking at it and seeing if it matched your intentions going into it, seeing where there's crossover and seeing where the Venn diagram kind of meets. Because I hope you're going into your journey with pretty firm intentions, you know. Of course, spirit has other things in mind that might not match your intentions at all, but still, you're taking all of these things, your intentions, what spirit is showing you, your reflections afterwards, and you're kind of looking at this Venn diagram approach. You're seeing where there's crossover, to seeing where the sweet spot is. And that's what you're taking into those next 7 days, into your meditation, and kind of just going in there with a lot of compassion towards yourself, and with a sense of wonder, knowing, having a deep-seated knowing that whatever you experienced during the psychedelic journey was not a result of just the drugs themselves. The drugs were triggers. They were doorway openers for things that have been there all along. And once you know that these things, this cosmic shift, this alien contact, this change in your relationship with your depression, this change in your relationship to your parents, this change in relationship to your anxiety or to your what it is you think you should be doing in life. You know, if you can sort of position yourself to bear witness to these things and to listen to the answers and take that into your practice for the days afterwards, that can extend into weeks afterwards and months afterwards, and create a paradigm, a new sort of living life paradigm for yourself, where you can experience the long-term effects of psychedelic consciousness. And the goal here is to have long-term efficacy here. And of course, doing psychedelics over again, it's sometimes, you know, a very wise thing to do is to go back into the melting pot to see what else is there. But what you don't want to do is to cross the line where you're forgetting that psychedelics are a confrontational drug. They're not escapist drugs. And the second you start using them as escapist drugs, then you're stuck in your stuckness, and you're just kind of spiritual bypassing and doing this whole kind of rinse and repeat thing over and over again. So the integration process it's really the most, it's the wisest thing you could do for yourself after the journey. If you don't know how to do that, there are a lot of people, many, many more than offer guided sessions, but there are a lot of integration counselors in your area, lots and lots, and talk to them, work with them, and to get a good idea on what that looks like. And it so happens I'll plug myself. I'm writing a book on integration right now for
good
for Sounds True, called "And Now the Work Begins."
Well, when that's ready for release, we'll send out a broadcast so people know about it. Thank you. Thank you for that. So Stephanie asks a question that, again, this is probably several people, there's some aspect of this question that several people ask. It says, how do I take or utilize psychedelic, and then in quotes, drugs, if my religion looks down heavily on using them? Do you believe it would be worth it to be excommunicated or disfellowed from for my sanity. I'm really struggling here. I'm going to share just a couple of things around this, and maybe Zach, you'll have a thought. So I have come across, they weren't in the series, but I had come across some pastors who actually were kind of known, and had large followings, who basically came into a psychedelic place that I know about and went through a process there. And one of the comments was after, I thought I knew God, now I know God. That was the one that stuck most. So yes, there might be dogma around this, and there might be people who feel like it's threatening, or it's, the devil's work, or that kind of a thing. I mean, I guess everybody has to make their own decision as to what they subscribe to and why they subscribe to it. I personally don't see a contradiction between someone who explores this type of an experience and somebody who has a certain faith. If anything, it should be supportive, or probably likely will be supportive of it, unless you're in the wrong place. Then you're going to find out, maybe I don't need to be here. I do know also several individuals who practice varying religions and are devout in their in these various religions. And I know some that just it drove them deeper into it, and some of them found that it wasn't for them, and they saw a new path for their future. So it's a scary thing when you've been practicing a certain spirituality for whatever period of time, and you recognize that you might do something that could question it. But in my mind, you're already questioning it if that's the case, and now you're maybe seeking a deeper truth for yourself. So I guess you're the only one who could answer that question, Stephanie, and anybody else has similar questions. Am I betraying my religious faith by doing this? My answer, my own personal answer, is no, you're not. But of course, other people might feel differently. Zach, I have to imagine you've worked with people who were, devout, Christians or Jews or other religions that maybe struggled with this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a common one, and it's a very rich topic. It's one we could talk about for hours. It's more a commentary on religion than it is psychedelics.
Right.
I mean, one of the great canons on spiritual mysticism is William James, The Varieties of Religious Experiences, written over 100 years ago now. But James found himself fascinated with the big three religions, but also kind of the other little sects popping up, how they sort of shared a similar sort of vision of what it meant to have a revelatory experience. And if you look at the history of psychedelics, it goes back thousands and thousands of years, and many are used in many religious traditions and religious ceremonies. And somewhere along the way, when the big three religions sort of took hold of the world and made a lot of the smaller tribal, more kind of pagan or kind of offshoot religions, kind of made them kind of become less and less relevant, there became a lot more dogma involved about what it is you should and shouldn't be doing. And I am a deeply spiritual person and have even practiced a specific tradition, but I think if your relationship with spirituality and your own tradition isn't malleable to suit your own needs for growth, then you should take a look at it. I mean, that's what you just said too, Patrick, but that's really what I believe. I mean, you have to grow with it. Yeah. It doesn't grow with you, being subservient to the institution doesn't mean that you are betraying God. That is an institutional commentary. That is not a spiritual commentary. So I really encourage you to see the difference between your own path to God, your own path to opening up your spiritual heart, and that of the institution. They're two very different things.
Yeah. Yeah. One other thing I'll just add, one of our docuseries we did was Christ Revealed, and we brought a film crew to Israel and across the U.S. And one of the things that stood out from some of the, I think some of the more influential interviews and interviewees that we did was a couple of people made the comment that it's not about ritual, it's not about religion, it's about relationship.
Yes.
In the Christian sense, relationship with Christ. And it's not, what are the rituals you're on, and what are the religion, in the way that you practice it. I think Christ said, paraphrasing, I don't care about how you profess your faith in the public square. It's who are you when you're home and on your own. And I think that in that respect, that psychedelics could be something to really deepen a relationship with God, with Christ, or whatever it is that you've seen the practice. That could be there for you. I don't know, but it could be. So anyway, I just thought I would share that, because somebody else said, "Hey, where was it? Will Revealed Films be taking a group down to Costa Rica like they did to Israel for Christ Revealed? I'd like to join in. I'd love to join in." So I don't know. I haven't thought about it, but I like our field trips, and I like getting together with the Revealed audience, and being with them live and hanging out. So just be on the lookout, for emails. If that happens, you'll be the first to know. I got to read Bob's question here, because it's, we've already covered this, but, Zach is sitting here with us right now. It says, is there a practitioner in Austin? You're in Austin, right?
I'm in Austin.
Yeah. So is there a practitioner in Austin, Texas, who administers MDMA? Yes. Someone in the series said they were in a clinic in Austin. Well, now you know who it was. Where in Austin, and so we already gave out Zach's email. I think it was Zach Leary. You can see how it's spelled right on here. ZACHLEARY@mac.com, right?
Yeah.
So that's just reach out for Zach, and we'll take it from there. And there's again, a couple more questions coming in around that. This is sort of interesting, because some people are looking at medicinal, like very condition-based thoughts around, psychedelics, can it heal this, can it heal that? So here's one that says, is there any evidence of psychedelic therapy helping with disorders of gut-brain interaction, since many motility problems are caused by dysfunction of the autonomic nervous system? If so, what medicines would be most helpful? So do you have any specific experience with that, or do you even have can you venture?
I don't. That's something I don't know much about, but as I was mentioning earlier, there's a great symbiosis in sort of a kind of urban hotspots between functional medicine doctors who do a lot of gut biome work and the psychedelic community there, about really learning to see where your physical, where your nervous system and your body and your gut biome are at before engaging in the psychedelic experience. So I encourage you, there's so many great functional naturopath practitioners out there who are really dialed into the science here, way beyond anything that I know. Here in Austin, there's a great group called MSW and Dr. Valerie Chavez. In LA, Dr. Joseph Bruglia, but lots of people around.
Got it. Yeah, and with Laura's question around that, Jana has a question and Terry has a question kind of similar. Jana's question's on OCD. It says there's been a successful treatment of OCD with psychedelics. I was hoping to be accepted into the MAPS trial, but didn't qualify. Where can I go? What psychedelic should I start with? Could it actually make it worse or negatively change me? And then Terry was talking about pain that I'm assuming it's a she, has pain made worse by THC or a blend of CBD and THC. Would psychedelic medication be more apt to work? So I'll just say this, and again, Zach, you'll probably have better comments, but so the OCD, gut problems, etc. my experience, working in the wellness field for a lot of years and developing technology in that world, and I'm fairly familiar with functional medicine practice and these types of things. All of these things have, I shouldn't say all of them, but many of these things have a material, biological aspect to them. But I have seen too many times in my life something psychological or psychospiritually changes, and next thing you know, gut problems resolve and OCD can resolve. And I mean, I'm talking about not just psychedelics, I'm talking about people who are having serious gut issues, and they get out of a bad relationship, poisonous relationship, and next thing you know, their gut problems go away. And I didn't change their diet. I didn't give them any new types of probiotics. It was just a psychological strain or depression in their life that was causing physiologic response in the body. The body, as the book says, the body keeps score. So, so what I will say as a very general comment is that a psychedelic experience that causes you to look at pain or trauma in your life without engaging your fight flight mechanisms, so you can observe it and process it without putting your body under strain and stress, may be able to heal things that you might have been struggling with looking for answers. I don't know, everybody's different, but is it possible that there could be, that psychedelic experiences could be a solution to these types of issues, be it gut disorders, OCD? And Terry's talking about pain, which is made worse by CBD and THC, which is kind of the opposite of what normally happens. Zach said this earlier. I don't know that your pain will go away, but the relationship you have with the pain might change. Because what I could tell you from my own practice way back when, people constantly talk about my back pain, my neck pain. They self-identify with their pain. And suddenly, if you can separate yourself from that pain, maybe you've got a better chance of getting rid of it. So just, those are my kind of general thoughts around this. But Zach, what do you think?
I agree with everything that you said, 100%. I mean, you said it all already. I mean, psychedelics aren't going to act as a catalyst to act as a painkiller. It will change your relationship with your own life, It's a great thing Michael Beckwith of Agape always says: want to change your life, change your thoughts. Mm-hmm. That may sound pedestrian and small, but it is true. Chances are, if you have intestinal issues and you're otherwise a normal, healthy person, there's some sort of external thing going on in your life that you have not fully unraveled yet, whether that is past traumas, an abusive relationship, you work too much. Here in the West, we are obsessed with work and falling really out of our harmonious balance with work, life, nature, relationship, and otherwise. And chances are there's something going on there. So to change, to think that the paradigm means that, oh my God, I'm just going to take these magic mushrooms and that's going to go away, but I haven't changed this other thing over here or addressed it. That's not what this is about here. They are merely just another ingredient in your toolbox where you really have to work on everything together holistically as one package here.
Understood. So we have like 5 minutes, so I'm going to do a little bit of a lightning round. We'll just I'll just try to hit like 3 questions maybe real quick here. This is one from Angela that you're not the first person I've spoken to, or I've heard from Angela who said this similar thing. It says, if you completely black out during a 5-MeO DMT session and think, quote unquote, nothing happened, but people there say you screamed for 20 minutes straight with no knowledge, what is happening?
Well, the mysteries and the mysteries around 5-MeO are far beyond anything that we can put in a peer review studied or talk about. It is 5-MeO specifically is the quickest doorway into ego death and into interdimensional multiverse experience here. How that works in the brain is we're not quite sure yet. Listen to Terence McKenna. Just YouTube Terence McKenna, listen to a lot of him and get back to us.
Thank you. That's great. Perfect for the lightning round. Another question: where can you go abroad to experience iboga, like Rhythmia is for ID? Do you know any iboga centers that?
There's quite a few in Mexico. Yeah, quite a few, and like in Rosarita and Encinitas and even Tijuana, close to the border. And there are quite a few in Holland. There's a couple in England. There's a couple in Berlin. All easily Googleable, findable.
Yeah, and there's also one in LA that I've heard of that people say good things about, but and if I knew the name, I'd say it. I just don't remember.
Check out a guy named Charles Johnson. If you just Google Charles Johnson ibogaine, check him out. Doing great work.
Yeah, but whatever you do, be very judicious. I mean, iboga is a very, very powerful medicine, and you have to be very judicious as to. I mean, I want multiple references, all giving a thumbs up before you went to any iboga center. Yeah, so yeah, be careful. So this is a great one for you, Zach. I'm a life coach who is interested in the integration aspect of psychedelics. Is there a reputable certification out there that can help me serve in this area? Don't you have a course on this?
Yeah, I do. I teach a course. It's more on, integration is part of it. It's more about teaching people how to be guides,
okay.
Really introducing them to a 16-part process that I have in teaching them how to be a guide. But CISS, the psychiatric, they're out of San Francisco, and the Psychology Institute of America both offer, I don't know what it means to be certified. I don't really know what that does for you, but they both offer great courses.
Yeah, it's just a matter of looking for a course. And I think for a lot of people, it's probably very rewarding work to help people integrate their experience and work with them. It's, I think it's fulfilling. Yeah, and it's important. So I think that brings us right up to the edge here. I'm just looking to see if there's something that would be really quick. There's a couple of questions. Somebody saying, how does psychedelic therapy compare to hypnosis? I think they're apples and oranges, right? I mean, they're just two different worlds. Yeah,
two different worlds.
Yeah, just complete. Just not. They're not comparable. They're very different. Both very useful, but very different. So I think we're at the top of the hour. So. Zach, what a trooper, man. Thank you for taking your time out of your night and for very openly answering all these questions. I just appreciate, who you are, what you do, and the spirit you bring to this. So just thanks for everything.
Thank you, Patrick. And it was great to share the space with you, and you have so much great knowledge yourself. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you. So for you who are watching right now, listen, it's been a wonderful journey. It's been great being with you. The free viewing period, I think, is going to be done in a couple of days. So if you're interested in owning Psychedelics Revealed, you can still do that now. But we're going to be taking everything down soon. I don't say that to pressure you, but just so you know. My great hope is that you just got some hope, inspiration, and value out of watching the series. I can't tell you how much joy it was for me to make the series and how fascinating it was. And if you got 15% of the fun and fascination that I got doing the series, then you had a good time. So anyway, thank you so much for being a part of this Revealed audience and for taking the, no pun intended, journey on this particular series. And it's just been wonderful to connect with you here. So I wish you all a great rest of your day. And